So respond to extinction is the procedure of repeatedly presenting a conditioned stimulus without the unconditioned stimulus until the conditioned stimulus no longer elicits the conditioned response. So let's go back to our Pavlov's dog, right? We've established that the bell is a conditioned stimulus, and now when we ring the bell, the dog's going to salivate because we've paired the bell with the dog food. Every time we've come in, we've rang the bell while we give the dog the food. And then now we don't even have to bring in the food in, we're ringing the bell and the dog's salivating. However, if we keep doing this, if we keep walking in the room and we ring the bell, walk in the room again and ring the bell, walk in the room and ring the bell, walk in the room, ring the bell, and it is never paired with the food after that, eventually the dog's going to stop salivating because it's become not conditioned anymore, right? So it's not going to elicit those behaviors because it was conditioned, and now we've rang it so many times that respondent extinction has occurred. And so again, we've repeatedly presented that conditioned stimulus without the unconditioned stimulus, so we haven't brought the dog food in at all until the conditioned stimulus no longer elicits the conditioned response. So now he's not salivating anymore because we've kept ringing that bell and we haven't paired it with the unconditioned stimulus. So do we ever only engage in responded behavior? So think back, we did that activity, you came up with your responded behavior examples, thought of the different things, thought of the different responded behaviors that you engage in a day. So is that all the behaviors you engage in? Definitely not. So now let's take a 3-minute activity. What other behaviors do you engage in that are not reflexes? So you came up with your examples of reflexes or your responded behaviors that you engage in throughout the day. Now there's a lot else that you do that are not responded behaviors. So come up with 5 behaviors that you engage in that are not reflexes and the reasonings of why you do them. So right now, you're engaging in this workshop, maybe you're taking notes, you're listening, things like that. So those are definitely not reflexes. So think about 5 behaviors that you engage in on a daily basis that are not reflexes, and then also write down why you do them. Why do you do what you do? Because again, we really have to start understanding why do we engage in behavior. If we're wanting to improve human behavior, we have to understand why we're doing it. And a lot of the times, if we look at within ourselves, if we look at our own lives and start to understand ourselves, we can really understand these concepts to help the students that we work with. So we talked about Skinner's radical behaviorism, and now we'll just kind of explain it a little more. So Skinner talked about radical behaviorism, and we had Watson's SR psychology, right? And so Skinner looked at it and he was like, okay, wait, but SR psychology can't explain all of behavior, right? Just like we talked about, you don't only engage in reflexes all day long. There's other behaviors that you engage in. So what explains those other behaviors, right? So we have an explanation for the reflexes, but what about all the other bajillion things that you do in a day? So that brought us to SRS psychology, which talks about the consequences that immediately follow behavior. So we have the antecedents, that stimulus change that comes before the behavior. We have consequences, that stimulus change that occurs after the behavior. And so now we're looking at it through SRS psychology. So looking at how do those consequences affect the behavior. So we talked about how antecedents affect the behavior. Now, how do consequences affect behavior? And radical behaviorism, Skinner's radical behaviorism really sought to understand all human behavior, private and public behaviors. So not just what we can see other people doing, but also your private behaviors, like the behavior of thinking, like, thinking through things like that. So operant behavior, we've got our respondent behavior, which is what we just talked about, right? You walk out, it's really bright, you squint your eyes. Now we have operant behavior, and this is stimulus, response, stimulus. And it corresponds perfectly with what we talked about of antecedent, behavior, consequence. So stimulus change is our antecedent, then we have our response or our behavior, and then we have another stimulus change or our consequence. And this is determined by a history of consequences. So these are learned behaviors because it's determined by a history of stimulus changes that have followed that behavior. And these operant behavior is selected, shaped, and maintained by consequences. So we'll talk a little bit more about this. So a toddler sees a toy light up, and then they engage in the behavior of the toddler hits the button on the toy, and then the toy starts singing and moving. So say the toddler's playing, they see across the room, there's this toy that lights up, so that's the antecedent, so that's a stimulus change, and they go over to the toy, they engage in the behavior of hitting the button on the toy, and the toy starts singing and moving. And so they engage in that behavior, and it's going to be shaped by the fact that after they hit that button, that toy starts singing and moving. It's super cool, and now the behavior is definitely going to increase in the future. So the toddler knows when I hit that button, it does these cool moves, it starts singing, maybe the lights get brighter. So now in the future, that behavior is going to increase, and the next time the toddler's playing with that toy, they're definitely going to hit that button. Another example is we've got some eggs cooking on the stovetop, and a kid sees them cooking there, and the kid touches the stove, and the kid gets burnt. And so we have the antecedent stimulus. So we've got the eggs cooking on the stovetop, the kid sees them. We got the behavior, the kid decides to go touch the stove. And then the consequence, or what happens after, is it's super hot. We have that stimulus change. It's really hot. The kid touches it, they get burnt. This behavior is likely going to decrease in the future because the kid just got burnt. They're not going to do that again. And again, consequences either increase or decrease the frequency of behavior in the future. So in the other example with the toy, that behavior is going to increase. In this example, that behavior is going to decrease because of the consequence that followed it, and they got burnt. Another example is you pick up the phone and you dial your friend's number, and then you get to connect with the friend. So the antecedent is we've got that phone, we see our phone, and we're going to dial our friend's number. So we engage that behavior of dialing the friend's number, and then the consequence is we get to connect with the friends. So that stimulus change is we get to connect with the friends. And this behavior will likely increase. We've been missing that friend, we want to talk to them because we engage in the behavior of dialing their number. Now we get to connect with them, and so in the future we're going to be more likely to dial that number. It's going to increase the future occurrence of the behavior of dialing our friend's number. So again, we can see how that consequence is shaping that behavior, just like we talked about with SRS psychology. So that consequence is going to shape that behavior. It's either going to increase it or decrease it, and in this example it's going to increase it. Selection by consequences. So we talked about how consequences shape behavior. They either increase or decrease it. And so then we have ontogeny and phylogeny. So ontogeny is the selection by consequences operates during the lifetime of the individual organism. And then phylogeny is selection by consequences is parallel to Darwin's natural selection in the evolutionary history of a species. I don't know about you guys, that's a lot of jargon. I barely, could pay attention, and I'm the one reading it. So let's break it down. So we have ontogeny, which is how the environment affects an individual in their life through selection by consequences. So just like I talk about, that kid touches the stove and gets burnt, that's going to shape that behavior. They're not going to likely do it again in the future. On the other hand, the kid, touches the toy, it lights up, that's going to affect their behavior. They're going to be more likely in the future. It's going to increase the future occurrence of them pressing that button in the future. So ontogeny is that on the individual level, how is the environment affecting them in their life through selection by consequences? How are those consequences shaping their life and shaping what they do? Phylogeny, on the other hand, is how a group naturally evolves through selection by consequences. So ontogeny, we can think of, has ON, starts with the 1, so it's on the individual level. Phylogeny is on that group level and how we evolve through selection by consequences. So operant conditioning, we talked about respondent conditioning. We kind of went through that with Pavlov's dog. Now we have operant conditioning, and this is the process and selective effects of consequences on behavior. So like we talked about, consequences can increase or decrease the future occurrence behavior. So consequences affect the future behavior. And operant conditioning is this process where the consequences have effects on behavior and how they have effects, what they're doing to the behavior. Are they increasing or are they decreasing it? Again, it's affecting the future behavior. So future behavior can either increase, so these consequences can increase the future behavior, or they can decrease the future behavior. So they can increase the future behavior, that would be reinforcement, like with the kid touching the button on the toy, that's going to increase in the future, that's reinforcement. You call your friend, you connect with your friend, that's going to increase your future behavior. Decrease future behavior is a punisher, so things like the kid touches the hot stove, that's going to decrease their behavior in the future, that would be a punisher, or the process of punishment. So again, consequences, they affect future behavior, not current, future behavior. They can either increase or decrease the behavior. If it's increasing the future behavior, it's a reinforcer. If it's decreasing future behavior, it's a punisher. All right, we have positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, and negative punishment. So let's kind of break these down. Oftentimes it's most easy to understand these concepts if you create a little table. So we've got positive and negative at the top. So positive is when a stimulus is presented or added to the environment. Negative is when a stimulus is removed or stopped or postponed in the environment. Reinforcement, we've talked about, it is a consequence that increases future behavior. Punishment is when it decreases future behavior. So let's look at positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is when a stimulus is added or presented in the environment that increases future behavior. Negative reinforcement is when a stimulus is removed, stopped, terminated, postponed, that increases future behavior. Positive punishment is when a stimulus is added or presented to the environment that decreases the future behavior because it's punishment. Negative punishment is when a stimulus is removed, stopped, terminated, postponed, prevented, that decreases the future behavior. So let's talk about some examples. So for positive reinforcement, we're buying from a vending machine to get candy. So we're going to engage in that behavior, buying from a vending machine, we're going to get candy, and that buying behavior increases. So because buying behavior increases, we automatically know it's reinforcement. And then because we're getting candy, a stimulus is added to the environment, we know it's positive. So it would be positive reinforcement. For negative reinforcement, it's scratching an itch, the itching sensation stops temporarily, and the itching behavior increases. So automatically, itching behavior increases, we know it's reinforcement. And then we look at the stimulus, so the itching sensation stops temporarily, we know that's negative. So we know that this one is negative reinforcement. For positive punishment, we have you stay out late past curfew, you get added chores, and past curfew behavior decreases. So we see past curfew behavior decreasing, automatically we know that's punishment because punishment decreases future behavior. Then we look at, okay, the consequence was you got added chores. And so that's an added stimulus to your environment, so it's going to be positive. So that one would be positive punishment. Then we have negative punishment. So you hit your brother, you get your Xbox token for time taken away that day, and your hitting behavior decreases in the future. Automatically, hitting behavior decreases in the future, we know that's punishment. And then we can see that the Xbox token gets taken away, so a stimulus is removed, and so we know it's negative. Then we have different types of reinforcers and punishers. So we have an unconditioned reinforcer, a conditioned reinforcer, unconditioned punisher, and conditioned punisher. And unconditioned reinforcers are things that, again, they're going to increase the future occurrence of behavior. So those could be food, water, sexual stimulations, those things that we're born with. So food is innately reinforcing immediately when we're born. A conditioned reinforcer could be things like money, video games, technology, things that we've learned over time that are reinforcing, that are going to increase our behavior in the future. An unconditioned punisher is going to be things that, again, innately we're born with, and those are going to be things like pain, sensory intensity, like it's too hot, it's too loud. Those can serve as punishers, and again, they're unconditioned because we're born with them. Conditioned punishers could be things like speeding ticket, reprimand, going to the principal office. Again, things that are learned, but that decrease the future occurrence of behavior. We've talked about response classes with our little cloud and our raindrops. So we've got that bigger cloud and we've got the little responses under it that serve certain functions. So consequences increase or decrease response classes, not just a single response. So we'll talk about an example of this. So let's say you call your friend and they answer and you have an awesome hour-long talk. And so we have this overall cloud, right, our response class of connecting with a friend. So not only is calling your friend going to increase, but also sending a text to your friend, sending them a funny reel. So this whole response class is going to increase, not just the one behavior, but the whole entire response class. So the behavior of calling your friend was reinforced with not only increased, but response in the future, but also responses in the response class in the future. So you're calling your friend behavior, that's going to increase. Sending a text to your friend, increase. Sending them a funny reel. Anything that is in that response class of connecting with your friend is going to increase.